Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, middle of the week here on the Big Me Kickoff. Among the topics we'll talk about today, a recruiting disappointment up north, which hasn't made any Ohio State fans sad. Talking a little bit about the portal, and Ohio State learns its men's basketball opponents for conference play, the first year of the new Big Ten. Who's home, who's away, who's to play. We have all of that and more here on the Big Me Kickoff. But first, let's talk about our friends over at No Naturals, who are gracious sponsors of this show. And I will bring the notes in as soon as I read them. Are you ready for an entirely different edible experience? Welcome to No Naturals, where we're shattering the stereotype of one-note, slow-acting gummies. Forget waiting over an hour to feel the effects. Our gummies are like a sprinter out of the blocks, fast-acting in just 15 to 30 minutes. Picture this, you're not just choosing your flavor, you're choosing your vibe. With 5 core experiences and 6 custom combos, you're in full control. Whether it's energy and focus without the crash, a peaceful slumber that lasts all night, or a game-changing burst of bliss and euphoria, these edibles are the real deal. And the best part, you don't need a doctor's recommendation. No Natural gummies are dispensary quality and discreetly delivered right to your door. So whether you're craving a productivity boost, a good night's sleep, or some blissful euphoria, say hello to No Naturals. Try them today and use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order at shop.nonaturals.com. And as I've said in the past, I use the product. I am a big supporter of it, and I urge everybody who is interested in using these types of gummies to check them out at shop.nonaturals.com. Running it in the scroll, it's in the show notes, all that good stuff. Let's talk a little recruiting. And I know this is an Ohio State show, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or whatever that statement is. And I'm not going to say that anybody from Ohio State is necessarily going to say that Kentucky is a direct recruiting peer. Ohio State has lost a kid now and then to Kentucky, but it is infrequent. So they aren't necessarily recruiting the same kids all the time. One player from the state of Ohio that it looked like was going to not only get away, but potentially head north, is Cleveland Heights running back Marquise Davis. Tony Alford leaves to go to the team up north, and the crystal balls roll in for Michigan to land him. And recently, just at the at an underclassmen camp, he talked about that he and Ohio State aren't exactly vibing anymore, and that's fine. Well, imagine to my surprise, I wake up this morning, and I'm playing around on the computer, and a little bit into the morning, I look, and suddenly I see Marquise Davis committed to Kentucky. And I'm like, well, that can't be Cleveland Heights Marquise Davis. He's supposed to be going to Michigan. So I look a little closer, and the graphic's a little deceiving because it's got an SEC graduate patch on the jersey, on the edit. So I'm like, all right, am I really confusing myself here? Kid in the picture looks like him. Pull up his profile. It looks like him. Lo and behold, it is him. So Tony Alford's first impression for Michigan fans is a miss on a guy that Michigan was allegedly in a huge dominating position for. Now, we won't ever really know what Marquise was thinking all along. That would be up to Marquise to tell us, and that would be up to Marquise to tell us honestly. I'm not saying he would deceive us, but you don't know what you're thinking from moment to moment and have a chart. Well, from 6 to 603, I was leaning this way, but from 604 to 609. So Marquise Davis committed to Kentucky. Now, there's a long way to go. It is May. We got to get to December. Lots of the finest kids out there commit to Kentucky at one point, only never to end up at Kentucky. So I wouldn't say that this one is dead, but Davis certainly did give quotes at one point about not wanting to be somebody who commits and then commits somewhere else and commits somewhere else, that his commitment is, his bond. And I'm putting words into his mouth because I don't remember the exact wording on the article I read. But he doesn't seem like somebody who was just trying to lock in a spot. When you're as talented as Davis, you don't need to lock in a spot. Somebody will be there for you at the other end. So if we take that off the table, it really seems as if this was just a major collapse by Michigan, that weren't able to close the deal. I don't know. Kentucky was able. Vince Marrow, who recruits the state of Ohio pretty well for the Wildcats, was able to get in there and not only land him for Kentucky, but keep him away from Michigan. Now, Ohio State fans are going to be like, see, this is what happens. The two that got away really for Ohio State under Alford that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about Richard Young because they never had Richard Young. Things looked really good there, and then they didn't, and that's just how recruiting works sometimes. But the two that got away from Ohio State were both South Florida kids, and Ohio State lost them to Miami. So last time I checked, Lexington, Kentucky, and Cleveland Heights didn't get any closer to one another. So what exactly happened there? Now, let's not forget that Michigan is on 3 years probation, and show causes were issued to certain people involved in Cheeseburger Gate and everything else. And there's a whole nother case hanging on that hasn't necessarily gotten to the NOA stage, with notice of allegation stage or anything like that. I don't know if a player's opinion on a school is going to change on a dime on something that's, short of, 3-year bowl ban or like that type of news. But I'm not sure why Marquise Davis decided to commit today, to commit to Kentucky, how any of that happened. But there are a lot of sad pandas up in Ann Arbor right now, because this one was supposed to go in their direction and it didn't. And I've had plenty of Ohio State fans giving me celebratory high fives about this. And I'm like, I'm just here to cover the news. But they're like, well, you can give me a high five. I'm like, just so you don't stand there looking foolish, trying to high five nobody, I'll give you a high five. But an interesting point nonetheless. The transfer portal has closed, at least has closed in terms of the door being open. There's technically a day left for grad transfers. But for non-grad transfers, that door closed at midnight. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't hear about players today or tomorrow. As long as you start the process before the door closes, they hold the door open for you. And that process can take up to 48 hours. So somebody who came in at 11:59 Eastern, we may not know what their status is until Thursday night. And realistically, maybe even until Friday morning. So if a kid goes into the portal and you're like, well, he's not a grad transfer, what's up? Well, that's what's up. Gavin Wimsatt at Rutgers apparently has lost the quarterback job to the transfer from Minnesota. The Athan, the Greek player. I could never get his last name properly. I don't have it in front of me to sound it out, so I'm just not going to butcher it and look stupid. I'd just rather take a pass on it. So Gavin Wimsatt, you wonder if that news that came out today was a result of, well, he's already put himself in the portal that he was told prior to the portal closing, and he's in that purgatory right now of he's in the portal, but he's waiting on the clearinghouse to rubber stamp the paperwork and put all of that through and have him officially show up on those roles. The point being on here is Ohio State had 6 players enter the portal, which, again, I think all said and done is about the number that people were expecting, 5, 6, 7. Strangely enough, Ohio State did not have as much offensive line portaling as I expected. Enoch Vamahi left, or is leaving. He hasn't left yet. He hasn't landed anywhere. Obviously, we saw some secondary departures. We saw Jahad Carter. We saw Cedric Hawkins. We've already seen Ced Hawkins land at UCF. The other news was a little bit more recent. We've not seen Jahad Carter's landing spot. One position where Ohio State did not see any attrition is quarterback. And I guess I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised, yet I'm not surprised, yet I'm surprised. Let me explain. 5 quarterbacks, a lot of quarterbacks to carry through. You would think that somebody who just realized that they are either an upperclassman and fourth on the depth chart. And I'm just making up examples here. So please don't read into what I'm saying. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm not using my little orphan Annie decoder ring here. I'm not trying to send secret messages to just 4 people, just making up scenarios. So, I mean, if you are buried and you're an upperclassman, or you're an underclassman and you feel that you're buried, basically, if you're buried, why not leave? But with that being said, if you're an underclassman and you can get a year developing at Ohio State, even if you're running scout team, but you're still being worked with by Chip Kelly, by Ryan Day, by some of these offensive staffers, would you not be in a better position to do that when you still have several years of eligibility on the back end to go in during the quote unquote the early portal period and find somewhere to land there and maybe be in a better position to go into somewhere and be the guy that year? I don't think there are a lot of places that don't have their quarterback, or at least a group of quarterbacks that their quarterback is going to have to come from. So what are you gaining by leaving Ohio State May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd? I mean, getting into the portal prior, finding somewhere, missing spring ball at your new school. What has you believing that you're going to come in and start somewhere at that point, being greatly behind the 8 ball? Whereas maybe, I mean, yes, you could go somewhere, sit, be the backup quarterback, maybe get in. You never know. You never know while you learn the offense. I mean, if you're a good enough quarterback, I think a lot of schools are going to be interested in trying to add you. But I think that sitting a year, getting a little bit more experience under your belt, if you have the years of eligibility left, is a better call. And I've really only kind of talked myself into this recently because I was pretty adamant that Ohio State was going to lose a quarterback at this point, just to get down to the more traditional number of 4. And yeah, I can see programs that certainly probably still need to address quarterback. Team up north being one of them. Alex Orji is not the answer. He's just not. But I don't know how any program out there that runs any sort of offense of moderate complexity is going to bring a guy in, really get him on campus in June, and then in June, July, and August is suddenly going to impart, especially a young quarterback, with enough knowledge to be able to come in and be the guy. Now, I mean, even an older quarterback, at least they can draw from their knowledge. Somebody who has a year of starts or a year and a half or 2 years or whatever. At least, at some point, football's football. And yeah, you could go back and say, well, in high school, an 8-yard hitch is the same as an 8-yard hitch in college, isn't it? Well, yes. But no, at the same time, it's not really the same thing. And I think it's just going to be difficult for somebody to just up and leave. I mean, we did not see, to my knowledge, I only watch it as closely as I can, a ton of quarterbacks bolting. I mean, obviously the Gavin Wimsatt news from today is a little bit of news, but didn't see a ton of it. And I certainly didn't see a ton of it of being like, wow, I can't believe that guy's leaving. He had a great situation where he was. So I think there is something to be said about sticking around, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the portal in general. And it's just, I had mixed feelings at first about the portal as it is in terms of unlimited transfers and everything else. And I don't know if I've necessarily moved off of that. I understand getting kind of bound legally and having to be like, well, we're just going to have to allow this. And it is what it is. But we have just seen too many instances of some players already starting on the path of a different school every year. If you're an NFL GM, is that a red flag for you? I mean, I guess every situation is different. If it's a kid who's doing that because his head coach keeps getting fired or elevated to another position somewhere else, that's one thing. If it's a kid who just can't grow roots anywhere for one reason or another, that's going to be more problematic to me as a GM about why are you constantly moving? I mean, a player who's leaving to go find opportunity, you went to school A for 3 years and you played on special teams, and you went to school B and you were an all-conference player and you did this and this. Well, that's a good move. If you just bounce around and bounce around and bounce around, does that create an issue? I mean, I don't know. I mean, and that's not really the concern of the portal. That should be the concern, I guess, of each player come into their own decisions and things along those lines. But I will end my portal conversation on this thought, and it is something I say every year, so bear with me if you've heard me say this in past years, but my biggest concern about the portal is not Caleb Downs, who goes from one fantastic program in Alabama to another fantastic program in Ohio State or whatever. My concern are the players who enter the portal never to emerge. If you enter the portal, the school that you're portaling away from, sure, they can bring you back. Hey, I changed my mind. I want to come back. Bryson Rogers entered the portal. Maybe I was a little too hasty in that decision. Comes back. Ohio State's like, please, come on back. We want you. But there are a lot of kids, and I'm talking in like the lower classifications, who enter the portal, don't come back, or never heard from again. Do they finish college somewhere? Is that a concern for them? I mean, are they going back home and just, hanging out and playing video games and not improving themselves as a person? I don't know. But we hear numbers every year of, 2,200 kids did not emerge from the portal. And again, we're talking D3, whatever, that's not necessarily a great scouting system in D3 to be looking at that type of stuff. If you're a D1 player, probably easier to drop down to 1AA or to 2 or 3 than it is for somebody from 3. Where are you dropping down to at that point? If you weren't getting it done at that level in AIA, that's a different organization. It's not the NC2A, that's the NAIA, and there's a Division 1 and a Division 2 there. So I'm not saying that I want to see a case of where you get automatically saved by your school if you don't get picked up in the portal. That's passing on a lot of additional costs to schools. But conversely, I don't like the idea of a kid who might be the first person in his family to ever go to college, goes to a D3 school, plays okay for 2 years. Some third uncle gets in their ear and is like, hey, you're bigger than this. They go in the portal, they find out, no, you ain't. And they don't end up anywhere. Probably don't have the means to go and finish college on their own without a scholarship. So the system has failed that kid. That third uncle's failed that kid too. But the fact that I can come up with that type of situation so easily doesn't mean that it's real. It's there. It's not like Noon is he's just going to the edge of reality to find a situation that could theoretically happen. This happens all the time. And I don't like that. I don't like that. Now, I'm not saying that college football, college sports in general has to bend over backwards to save these kids from themselves. I made a lot of dumb decisions in college. I mean, let me tell you, signed up for a lot of credit cards on the Oval that I had no business doing. I signed up for a lot of Columbia House 8 CDs for a penny, only to find out that I had to pay the piper at the end. But there's got to be a better system in place. And for that, I leave it to the real experts and not myself. We're going to shift gears to basketball here quickly as we get ready to wrap up. I'm going to be live Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern. 10 a.m. Eastern, 1 hour, and 1 hour only. I got some things I got to do later in the day. And that doesn't mean it's going to be 60 minutes on the nose. Then I got to bail. But we're going about an hour. We're not going 2. We're not going 90 minutes. We're going to try and go 60. So be sure to hit the bell, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, all that good stuff, so you don't miss our show tomorrow, 10 a.m. on this channel here at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We did learn Ohio State's conference matchups for men's basketball. That doesn't mean we've learned dates or anything like that. This is just the way a modern schedule release goes. You learn the opponents, and then later you learn the dates. Ohio State will be now part of a 18-team Big Ten. You still will play 20 league games. That means Ohio State will have 7 teams that it will play only at home, 7 teams that it will only play on the road, and 3 what they call 2-plays. 7 and 7 and 3 is 17. Ohio State makes 18, and that's where the math is. Your 2-play teams, you will play these teams in Columbus and in their building, Indiana, Maryland, and Nebraska. So Ohio State does not really get any breaks there. Assembly Hall, difficult place to play. The Pinnacle Bank Arena in Nebraska, difficult place to play. We'll see what this Nebraska team looks like. They lose a lot. And then Maryland, I don't remember what the name of the arena is. I want to say Capital One something or other, but I know that's on the football side. Not the easiest place to play. Teams that Ohio State will play at home: Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Northwestern, Oregon, Rutgers, and Washington. So once again, first of all, you get the 2 Michigan schools. So Ohio State's not going to have to go to Breslin. Ohio State's not going to have to go to Chrysler. You get the 2 Michigan schools there. They're also going to get Iowa, no Carver Hawkeye to have to deal with there. Northwestern comes to town, so that's fine because Welsh Ryan is becoming a little bit more of a difficult place to play for as small and crummy as the facility is. Rutgers, so you're not going to have to go out to the rack. And then Oregon and Washington are your 2 new teams, and they come to Columbus. Ohio State will not have to go to the Pacific Northwest. On the other side, Ohio State has away-only games with Illinois, Minnesota, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, USC, and Wisconsin. Illinois at Assembly Hall there can be, looks like a giant spaceship or clamshell or space clam or whatever. Difficult place to play. Minnesota can be difficult at the barn. Penn State has given Ohio State some problems through the years in their building. Purdue, Zach Edey's gone, but they have 2 more 7-footers, so you get that. You get the 2 SoCal schools, UCLA and USC. Got to figure that they're going to do that in a week. You do that like Tuesday, Friday, or however you want to do that, and you just stay out there so you're not making those constant trips. It'd probably be like Oregon and Washington would figure out a way to do that backed up against another trip out east. And then you got Wisconsin over at Kohl Center. So the biggest takeaway I have here is, damn, the Big Ten is just a really difficult league. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying that the Big Ten is a really good league. I think last year proved it probably was not a great league. But there are not a lot of games on that list I'm like, ooh, that's a gimme, that's a gimme, that's a gimme. There was a point last year where opponents may have felt that Ohio State was a gimme. And that's not even fair because Ohio State did play well in a lot of games and just couldn't finish or whatever. But that's what you got there. Ohio State men's basketball still trying to fill out its roster. 11 of 13 scholarship position or players are known. Still need at least a wing, if not 2 wings. We'll keep you up to date on all of that, as well as everything on the football side. But once again, be sure to join us Thursday, 10 a.m. That is not a time that I normally do a show. I'm expecting to get a lot of people who get in late and it's like, why didn't you tell me? I need to come up with a better system to let people know when I'm going to do these shows, or just bear down and get a schedule that I like and that I can live up to. But until then, have a great day. Be safe, and I'll talk to you all very soon.